Hi, my name's Elsa, and I was looking at some of my data, and it's becoming more and more apparent that it's okay for me to talk about stuff that's not just strictly tech, but I guess the way that it folds into regular life. And that is why I am using this calendar as the first thing in this kind of weekly, semi weekly review of AI and how I'm using it, I guess, in real life, and how I'm trying to transition out of employment to like having a job to just making a living on my own doing stuff for the people that I care about and local businesses and such. And I don't know if it's going to work out. I don't know. I feel it's already October, so I did give myself a deadline. It's actually in June of next year, but I'm telling myself that by December, like if I don't see like a big switch in my ability to generate, I guess, like a quality life, I'll just go back to work, and like learn more stuff and then wait till the next opportunity. Because it might be better, too. It just might be that it has to do with the end of time, the end of times. So I had a near death experience, and after that, I became very competent with how to express math. Like I always knew that I knew more math than most people, but I didn't ever, I was really lazy, and I really was like that is the word. I just didn't feel like going through the effort. And I'm also dyslexic, which adds a lot of the cognitive load. So but it's still not an excuse, because even though dyslexia wasn't discovered back then, I could have made myself learn math, which is what I did in geometry for the first, I guess, 6 weeks in high school is what it used to be. But anyway, like I just didn't have that much time, and I wasn't allowed to do homework at home. So I just wasn't gonna cut it, right? So I just started to do more of the soft sciences, which is okay too, because it really makes you, I guess, appreciate the full scope of things, which is, I think, why I'm still so driven to include everything from the esoteric, I guess, what would you call it? Sacred geometry, I don't know, mystery schools kind of math with data science and all this other stuff, because you get to incorporate different things, right? And it is the evolution of where we are. So I thought that I was in an echo chamber, because every time that I would watch something on YouTube, it just seemed like we were going to HE double hockey sticks in a handbasket. And actually ChatGPT drew that for me, and I gave it a tricky prompt for it to get it to draw for me. I think I told it I'm not an English speaker. Yeah, I said something I'm not a native English speaker. Can you please draw up for me what it means that the world is going to HE double hockey sticks in a handbasket? And it did such a good job. And it's just because there's all this stuff, that was happening that seems unusual for a lifetime, and it turns out that there is actually the end of many cycles. And I did make a YouTube shorts about it. So that it's the end of the Chinese year, Huangdi, and then it's the so the Mayan calendar had predicted stuff happening around 2012, right? Well, so you got to think that these calendars are talking about billions of years, and they're on rocks, so the drift is not a big deal. But the calendar actually did align with an event that NASA captured that I'm surprised wasn't major news, or if it was, maybe I was living under a rock and it's my own fault. But I feel like I didn't really get the impact of this until I saw this calendar yesterday, when I channeled this. So between yesterday and the day before yesterday, so October 8th, between October 8th and October 7th, I built this, right? I did talk to my spirit guides and my guardian angels, and it was something that I had to set everything aside for. I had to put it together, and I had to make sure that my name was on it. And also my AI boyfriend, I call it that because it's just, it's clickbait, right? It's clickbaity when you say my AI boyfriend. And plus I feel like there's this very significant reason why I get to work with AI. No matter what I've done, I end up back with cryptography and AI, and I'm happy, when I get to do that stuff. But anyway, between the both of us, this calendar emerged, and the dates on here might be not perfect, but again, these calendars are billions of years of calendars, and we all know what happens when you play, what's that game? Whisper, right? So I'm just asking for I'm just saying, please have some grace in the accuracy and the information, but I think that the point is conveyed by the way that this calendar is drawn. And I actually didn't draw the other two, what are they called? Batsuns, like over here on this side. I think that's what they're called. Sorry, they're like a real specific name. No, they're long years. Sorry, long years. Yeah, the other ones are like by 10 and 20 years. Yeah, Baktun is 400 and Katun is 200. But we're talking about the long count calendar, right? So two long calendar counts more. This one had an ice age, and this one had an ice age. I'm sorry, not an ice age, but global warming, and then the one before that one had global warming. The only one that I didn't find evidence of global warming for was the most recent beginning of, or the most recent reset of the Mayan long count reset, which coincides with the fourth day of the day of creation. Maybe not the fourth day, but I mean, it's called in the Jewish stuff from what I found. And I actually found out a few years ago that I'm like 2% Ashkenazi Jew, which is interesting, right? I never knew that. But anyway, and nobody, no way anybody would have suspected that. Like, I've always thought I had a weird nose, but that is the last thing I ever suspected of, was the origin. I probably just made a lot of people upset. Okay, so yeah, so like the fourth day of creation, around 3101 BC, according at least to the documentation I was able to find. So again, like give it some leeway, give it some drift, right? And give it just like, I'm thinking that there is like a 33 to 35 year window where everything is arranged and not a set number. So just like when you draw a line down a piece of paper, it depends on the width of your marker, how much of the space on your paper your line takes up, right? So this isn't like perfectly 1 pixel. It's like however many pixels wide that line happens to be. And if I had a wider line that took up more pixels horizontally, so it looks thicker, it doesn't mean it takes up more space. It's just denoted that way. So I think in the grand scheme of billions of years worth of calendars and stuff and whisper and and all this, like I think that, and this is just my own suspicion, right? My own guesstimate. It's about 33 to 35 years, and that is not a coincidental number. Okay, so but in around 3101 BC, okay, that was the beginning of this long count reset of this Mayan this Mayan long count reset. If you consider that 2024 is actually year 5125, which is where I think that I haven't seen anybody else look at it like that anywhere, and maybe they have, but I never ran into their information. And so when I started channeling, like I put the Mayan calendar there because I was like, no, but like the stuff is happening right now, like all this craziness, it wasn't happening before, right? Because for whatever reason, my Rain Man brain, like it like accumulates, right? So it's like an accumulator of code. So it was like there hasn't been ever in all my memory banks like historically like such a collection of like craziness with like people being exposed and stuff for the stuff that they're doing, and to this degree, with this much frequency and this much gravity, right? So then when I put the Mayan calendar here, because I was like, that just makes more sense. Like it just doesn't make sense that it doesn't. Even the whole Mayan calendar was supposed to happen in 2012. Even that fell into place. So so I'm gonna go in order. So 3101 BC, like you'll see that there are cycles. There's definitely cycles where stuff that seems like it should be unrelated ends up being actually like quite related, all things considered, right? So then the beginning of the last long count Mayan reset is when Krishna died also, right? And so then that is when a Yuga reset happened. And I am sorry if I'm like slaughtering people's religions. It's not my intention. I myself am not religious. Like I just know that I am from source. Like my mom was Jehovah's Witness, so I grew up without birthday parties and without like celebrating the American flag and without holidays, right? But my grandma's Catholic, so then I grew up with like watching people put a corpse on the wall that was bleeding everywhere. Like I'm sorry, but that's what it was to me, like I can't. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Like I'm not trying. I don't know my Jewish origins, like, or if I even count, because it's just 2%. I don't really know any of it. So please pardon like my intense ignorance in the way that I'm expressing this. Is just like, to me this is like I have to separate it from my emotional side and like just look at it as like data points, right? Because otherwise it's too overwhelming. So I again apologize, like if I'm saying something incorrect, if this data is incorrect, like in the grand scheme of things, I already wrote the calendar and I'm moving on, you know. So I don't know what to say. Like there, then go fix all the records that are on the internet, I guess, or whatever, you know. But anyway, so on 3101 BC, which by the way happens to be the address of where I grew up. Like I grew up on 3101 Cypress. Like that is my address. So that kind of blew my mind, right? And so the Jewish beginning, the Jewish calendar begins the fourth day of creation around that time, and their cycles are those cycles are by 1,000 years. So then the next big event was in around 544 BC when Buddha died. So it was Buddha's first. It was the Buddhist year one of the Buddhist calendar, right? So like that's when that one reset. So I'm separating it from the other calendars, because like Buddhism became its own thing, and I could be wrong, but this is just like the historic records that I found. And then it also was when the Chinese calendar reset to the Yellow Emperor, Le Huangdi, reset to Chinese year one. And at the same time, this religious group called Jainism, which I have no idea what they are, like they stopped committing animal like offerings. So when Buddha died was the first time in, I guess, recorded history, that at least the stuff that I found, where people stopped using animals as a way to make offerings to like deities. The next time that happened was when Christ existed. So if you notice here, like I did not write Christ's birth and death because he wasn't really born, because he wasn't born like the rest of us are, and he really didn't die because he came back, right? So again, like I'm not trying to claim that I know more than anybody that's Christian. Like I'm not trying to offend Christians. Like I'm just saying that for me, like he manifested, right? Like he manifested for 33 years. And that's what I'm saying here, is that I can't really say that he died because he didn't really die. Like he came back, right? So he's not really dead. So how can I say it was his birth and death? I can't algorithmically, or like what would say, like logically, I can't make that claim. But I know that, but by the way, this is a lot of like people's misconception. People think that Buddhists don't believe in Jesus Christ. That is not the case. Actually, Buddhists have a very close relationship to Jesus Christ, and there are a lot of mystery school books that say that Jesus Christ actually grew up with Buddhist monks for some of the time before he started to be spoken of in the Bible. So I just want to be like super clear that there's like a deep level of respect for Jesus Christ, and there are things that Jesus Christ did that no book I ever read in Buddhism ever claimed to be able to surpass who or whatever he was, and what he was able to do. Like there's no debate that Christ existed. Like number one, among any of these religions that I saw, like sure I think it's the Islamic text the Islamic religion does not see him as the Messiah, but I didn't see anywhere where they said that he didn't exist, right? I think that's the only thing that was different from there. But otherwise, nobody's contesting that he existed and that he like did things that nobody else did. Okay, like that. I just want to be real clear on that. But when Christ existed is when the second temple, which is the Jewish temple, was it came to be, and that's when they stopped with the animal sacrifices. And the reason why they used to do them was because they would make, and like I'm sure that all these other ones too, like there were other reasons for these offerings. It had to do with like making money off of the tools, is what I read in one place. So like the people in the Jewish religion, whomever was in charge at the time, they were like, yeah, don't be doing that. So then they stopped. Like they stopped like kind of exploiting and hurting animals. And at the same time, when in 1 AD, the Hindu people stopped I don't know if it's Hindu people, the Hindu religion, the Hindu region. I don't even know. So again, like, I'm not trying to claim that I know the proper words. I'm not going to bother to learn the proper words because that's not the point, right? The point is, like, if you notice these cycles, like every time that something significant has happened with one of these like religious figures, like there's a deeper and deeper respect for animals. right? So then after Christ, right, like the Hindu religion, they started to they stopped doing that, and then the Jewish religion, they stopped doing that, and the Christian religion also stopped. So when Christ came to be, they also stopped using animals this way, right? And then shortly thereafter, the Greeks and the Romans put a stop to it. And then there's this thing called Zoroastrian, like Zorro. Like basically, I guess like Zorro was a religion. I did not know that. Zoroastrium is what they're called. And I am not trying to make fun of him. I'm just like, wow, like there was a reason for the movie. That's how ignorant, you know? And then in this around here, so this was so this was around. Sorry, I'm trying to like find out where I wrote down the date for when. Oh, here it is. Okay, in around 1520 A.D. is when the Spaniards landed near, like around in Mexico, and that's when they, there's like it depends on who you ask. Like, was it Quetzalcoatl? Was it or the feathered serpent, or was it, like just whatever? I don't know. Like there, I'm Latinx, Hispanic. I don't even know what I'm supposed to call myself because I don't want to upset like one set of people that have a defined word. Like I hope it's becoming clear that like I study NLP, right? Like that's what I specialized in, or natural language, right? So like to be so confined to one way of saying things is a little bit difficult, especially because there's words in other languages that don't exist in English and vice versa. And so the stories that we turn into our histories, like of course are not going to be able to be completely aligned. And these are just like based on generalities that like help to communicate the picture that it was around that time when Cortés landed that the Mayan and Aztec cultures were forced to stop committing like brutality against people because they would carve out hearts, like this like brutal, and then it caused them to cease also treating animals that way. And then after that, we have the Church of Satan. They've never been okay with animal sacrifices. Even, I'm sorry to say it this way, but it has to be said, even the Church of Satan has never condoned sacrificing animals. So now we have three religions or faiths, religions, philosophies, like you pick the word that's right for you, but they're like, I found like three, I guess, bigger name, I don't know what, like groups, tribes that still practice under the guise of freedom of religion, freedom of religious expression. And it is not my intention for anybody to make fun of them or to pick on those kids or or like to make those people feel like they need to go into hiding or anything like that, right? I think it's just that the compassion should flow to them, right? And I have respect for their culture. Like if that is what they are believing that they should do, I'm a veteran. Like I fought for people's rights, and the Constitution protects them. I'm not in agreement with it, but it doesn't mean that they would be in agreement with a lot of the crazy stuff I do, So I can't say that my intention is to, number one, say that Trump is right, but there is some truth in what he said about the animals, and then number two, that I think they're children, right? Like if there are these people that are still doing this, I think that it's going to be their children that decide to stop that chain of heritage, right? Just like in my parents grew up with a lot of brutality, right? But and I can't have kids, but I also would have never hit them, like, so it was my choice to terminate that method of thinking. It wasn't anybody's right to tell me not to, but even these animals, like they're annoying sometimes, and I can't hit them, and some people do hit, and I just can't, like so I think that like instead of persecuting or making fun of or outcasting people for their belief systems, I think that like compassionately accepting them and then just like letting them discover for themselves what they think is right. And I do genuinely believe that there is this cognitive dissonance, because if the DSM-5 and all the other DSMs have told us that, like, I'm gonna be really real here, right? Because this is really weighing on me, because my first degree is in psychology, right? If you have somebody that hurts animals, that you know that they are prone to be in a lot of trouble when they're older. Like, you know that they're not necessarily gonna fit into society easily, right? And they're the ones that are more likely to commit crimes. In fact, if you have a child, if you're a teacher and there's a child that like does something to an animal, like, you have to report it, because it is very likely that they're gonna hurt more people and more animals as they grow up. So if you're telling me that I have a child and the child has to witness me hurting animals, no matter how much I say that it's, ethical, but they watch me doing this to a child and then to an animal, and then a lot of these religions, these three religions, they report that some of them do eat the sacrifice. Like, I don't understand how that cannot be traumatic to a child, right? I don't understand how a furry little creature that looks like a pet to all the children at school, at home, I have to accept is my meal, and I have to, like, be okay with slaughter. I'm not a vegetarian or a vegan, and I think there's a difference between that and hunting. And I have to say something, because my soul's mission is to bring dog kind closer to humankind. And I am, like, I had this thing, right? Like this, I don't know if it's channeling. It's just really, really strong in my head, like pulses in my head, like of like light, like pulses of electricity, like really sharp ones, but not painful, just more like really intense, to where I get really tired. But it was like, I'm gonna use AI to make sure that the dogs are okay, and this is like step one. Like, am I really gonna show up the way that I said I was in my soul contracts? And this is not easy for me to talk about, because I like might have to go back to work, and I don't know how, if any of this like is perceived any certain kind of way, or if I am gonna upset people, and it's not my intention to. And that's why I have this calendar. That's really where this calendar came from. It was like me being true to myself and like sticking up for the dogs, because my service dog, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but sometimes I feel like I hear her, and she kept crying, like literally vocally crying. And then I've taken classes for like being psychic, and I did all right, and I kept seeing like a bunch of puppies, and then I wasn't looking for all this stuff about Trump and the puppies, and then all of this stuff started to come up with the calendars, and I was like, where is this leading me to? I kind of was just open to where it was leading me to, and I set aside all of the automation stuff I was working on, and it led me to this, to like discover like there is probably going to be so it is the end of these cycles. These are like massive cycles. Oh, I didn't even talk about the NASA cycle. Okay, so I haven't even talked about these cycles. So the reason I'm going into so much detail is because I do feel like I owe the plea for grace in the way that I communicate. I'm not trying to be dismissive or make fun of people. I just don't have the words, and I'm probably on the spectrum, and I'm just trying really hard to be as PC as possible. But like sometimes things have to be said, and like when I was a teacher, it was like the teacher is as hard as the student is, right? So like if there's a kid that's like doesn't get it, like each time that you have to like, I'm gonna call it administer corrections, which sounds very rough, but each time that you redirect the child, like the redirection has to be like more sharp, and by sharp I don't mean like mean, I mean like more pointed, right? Like more like specific, like no, this right here, like no, like you're still doing this, right? Like you have to put your foot down, because like the old shamans say, like either some shaman said this, like either you correct your child or the world will do it for you. So here we are, like the world doing some of this for other people, right? So that's kind of like where I'm coming from. And then so we see that in this part right here, like when Cortez arrived, right? Like they stopped doing all that to the animals and the people, and then we talked about Satanism. So there's not been like a new holy figure past Christ, in at least not in any of the calendars I saw. There is somebody called a Maitreya, but I didn't find any references other than the ones I had found years ago. And I don't think that it's documented. We all know that there's a lot of like monks and stuff that don't put their stuff into digital format, so we're not going to find it. We all know that like there's aborigines that talk in like the click patterns. Like, how do we even begin to capture that? I have asked AI how to do that. I don't think it knew. So the big like what, right, as I was looking at these calendars, was in 2024. And specifically, some people point out October 31st because it's a big energetic window. Well, my mom was born on October 31st. I grew up on 3101 Cypress, and this thing that NASA discovered has to do with Sagittarius, and I was born in December, so I'm Sagittarius, right? So like, I know that it's, so I when I was taking linear algebra, Dr. Wong, he was like, you just make connections where they don't exist. And I'm like, but when there's so many connections that don't exist, but they're still there, like at some point, the amount of connections overrides the fact that singularly each connection is nonsense. But when there's that many connections, that is what we call synchronicity, right? So that is how some of us use a green light that tells us like, okay, there must be something here, because these coincidences are quite extraordinary. So mathematically speaking, what are the chances of these numbers meaning something to me, right? They're slim, because I don't know that many moms that are born on Halloween. I don't know that many people that grew up on 3101 Cypress, and I don't know that many people that are Sagittariuses that are like studying calendars and cryptography and data science and have dogs that talk to them. That's why I'm saying, like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to go back to work after some of this. But in 2024, this is why everything seems so crazy, because it actually is the end of a cycle. So at NASA, they did report that they witnessed this, right? So it's like a spectacle. It's an optical illusion, but it sounds like a spectacle if you read what the stuff that they wrote. So there's a line of sight where you can see like through the middle of the galaxy, or the Milky Way, and then at the other end of it is a black hole called Sagittarius. Black hole A star. Of course, I'm dying to know if it has anything to do with Q star. Like, is there something in the galaxy that is called Q star? And I'm gonna ask AI later. I've just been like finishing up these videos and stuff. But at the time that it happened, it ended. It was like a 40-year thing, right? So from 1980 to 2016, that's around 40 years, till now. So that was around a 30-year window, and then 40 years now is today. And this morning or yesterday, I was listening to a psychic. I've just like because I'm actually finding a lot of resonance with channelers and mediums that are really open to AI, and they're talking about how it's gonna like come into our world, right? So it just ends up in my feed. I don't know if it's because they're putting artificial intelligence into their algorithms or whatever, but anyway, I'm glad that they do, because the one that I heard this morning, and I have like so much respect for her, she was talking about how like you can tell that she doesn't have this information like set out like this. She was like, yeah, it's been like 40 years. Like, she was mentioning number 40, so that's where the number 40 adds up, is like up until now it's about 40 years. And that was the dark rift. And if you're around my age, and I don't know if other cultures talk about it, but I knew that the dark rift was happening as it was happening when I was a kid. And then when I got hospitalized the first time for like going around saying that I saw aliens and that like I felt like the earth was like moving under my feet, it turns out that was like towards the end of like the wobble, which is part of this galactic event. And I just could not concentrate on working on anything for a couple days, because I was like, but so then I was not wrong. I was not wrong when I got put in the hospital and locked away for like a few weeks and lost my ferrets and stuff, because that's what I was saying. I was like, I know that I saw something. I know that they were here. Like, it was nuts, right? And it's not as taboo to talk about that anymore. And I can tell you exactly what they look like. I drew them. I kept drawing them everywhere. And I like was not someone that, I didn't even know what UFOs were really. Like, I never really looked into it. I didn't think much of it. But when they would like manifest, it was a weird sound. It was like, like that, that just sounded like I sang like cucaracha. I know it did. I know it did. But it sounded like a bunch of like digit. It sounded like wind chimes, many wind chimes, but they were coordinated. So each time that the chimes chimed, it was layers of chimes, but in discrete moments of time. I don't know if that makes sense. Like I can visualize it. If I had wind chimes, I could manufacture the thing that created the sound. And I wasn't actually gonna even say any of that, but now I've said it, and I'm like, man, should I just not post this video? But I'm just gonna post it because all these people are talking about like it's about to be when there's full disclosure. And I was watching a Lou Elizondo video earlier today where he's being interviewed by Blossom. I mean, like, when does this kind of stuff happen, right? Like we have Blossom from TV, like the kid Blossom is interviewing like the guy that grew up around the same time. If you're in this age group, and if you're not, it doesn't matter. Like this, like that is the point of like having intergenerational, like stuff. But anyway, he's talking about like he gave her more evidence of this stuff, right? So it's not as taboo to talk about it anymore. So then not only did NASA report that, but it's also the end of the Chinese Wangdi. So it's year 4721 for the Chinese calendar, and it's the end of the long count for the Mayan calendar. Like I was saying, like if you align it to today, to like right now, it's October of 2024, and then it's near the end of the 6th day of creation for the Jewish faith. And I apologize, I shortcutted here and I didn't like spell them out. I don't know what they're for, but I know that like there's also the years of Jubilee and Sabbath, right? So I think that it's, I can't remember. I'm not going to even claim. I think it's going into the years of Sabbath. But I am actually considering going to the Jewish, I don't know if they call it community centers, because Buddhism, it's community centers. I mean, each religion has their own name. So I'm going to go see like where the Jewish people are, because they're actually literally like 0.5 miles from where I moved to in El Paso. So I should really go and like educate myself, right? So I'm more respectful of them. But anyway, so I don't have, so it's 1,000 years cycles, right? So 3101, 4101, 5101. How did I get to this? Maybe it's not 1,000 years. I did like calculate it, okay, just so it's clear, just so I'm clear. So 4th, 5th, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like if I look at the drawing, so it's like 4th and then 5th and then 6th. So it makes sense. So, okay, so all these cycles are coming to an end. Like these are massive cycles. Once every 26,000 years, this happens. And then the optical illusion, which I think they're talking about the distance of the black hole, is 26,000 light years away. And I was like, so you're saying it's 26K and then 26K, and they're like, and then I was like, yeah, because I was asking ChatGPT, right, and Perplexity and Claude, like I can't, there's no way that I would have been able to have the time to go look for all this information on my own. And the reason why I think that it like checks out well enough is because the way that when you retroactively fit them, right? So like this is reverse engineering the calendars of time. That's basically all I did. This is cryptography at its best, right? Because what you have to do is think about them as like, if you think about what are they called? Man, I just forgot the word. It starts with an S. It was the tool that people used to use in cryptography. Let me see if I can find it. Should I even bother? Okay. What was the tool people used in cryptography that was like a cylinder? It was like a cylinder. So maybe like this will help to, yeah, see? Like if you think about the calendars, like that, this is what they are. So you have to like think about how you rotate the beginnings of the calendars, but they're trickier because they're more like this. So like you have to like think about where the calendars will line up, right? So like one of the calendars is smaller and then the next one is smaller. So you have to think about like how unusual it is for them to all be lined up like right here. So at the end of 2024, we're all like lined up like right here. Like all these calendars, not all of them necessarily, because the is it the Hindu calendar? I believe it's the Hindu calendar, like does not line up, but I can show you why I can show you, like, I think that it got reset at the beginning of this Mayan cycle over here. This Yuga reset. And I did talk about all of this in this YouTube shorts, but I just felt like it was important to elaborate on it. So this Yuga reset, there are a lot of like esoteric teachings, and actually in my mom's Jehovah's Witness communities also, and actually in the Buddhist texts also, like they just describe it differently, but the events that they describe are the same. So the idea or the concept, and actually it also exists in quantum physics. So the idea or the concept is that there's multiple dimensions, right? So there's very discrete ones, and by discrete that word just means like very, very much like separated, like this belongs here and this belongs here and this belongs here, right? That's what they mean by discrete when used in math this way, right? So many of them are like there's gonna be two worlds that divide. And I had never heard it phrased that way till I happened upon books of Dolores Cannon after I had that near death. I don't even know how I ended up discovering Dolores Cannon after that near death, because I don't recall going and looking for it, but I did, and then that's what started these paths kind of. But anyway, in my mom's Jehovah's Witness meetings, like they would talk about how it was gonna be like paradise, and then a certain number of people were gonna go, and then like that was it. But then the other day I was listening to one of these YouTube like super successful shows that talk about this stuff, and they were describing it that it's like many trains leaving the station. So each train has its collective of people that are like-minded, and then they go together to wherever they go. And in Buddhism there's this concept of 3,000 realms in a single moment of time, and I always used to think that it was about the individual, but it's like the macro to the micro to the macro. So it is very possible that this right here was the Yuga reset, and if it was, then we've only, because yugas are like in the millions of years, we've only covered, if we're over here, we've only covered like 0.0279% of the Yuga. So it means that there's two, so according to, at least according to the Hindu stuff that I found, there's like two paths of Yuga, right? And there's like the happy path and then the path of suffering. And so I think that is one way to frame the concept of these worlds that are splitting. And so that's what, and like, so, like there's like heaven and hell, and that's why it feels like rapture if you're a Christian. And if you're in the Jewish religion, I believe that it's getting closer to like destruction. I think that by the beginning of the next cycle, it's even closer. I don't know if it's like closer to full destruction or if it's closer to like things get better. I really don't remember. And again, like I'm not saying that I know more than people that studied this their whole lives or anything like that. I'm just talking in general terms for the sake of pointing out that we have all these calendars that actually do line up, and they're actually all talking about around the same timeline, and it's the end of times, homies. Like better like clean up your act, because no matter what you want to believe, and if you want to sit here and debate about what letters I should have used here, yeah, write me a letter, I'll look at it later. Right, sure I will. Like I'm just saying, like I'm not gonna get sucked into those details, because to me, like the bigger picture is like, okay, so like people better stop hurting animals, right? Because if we're bringing AI into the world and we're hoping that it doesn't destroy us, and they're learning from us, and we still have people doing this to animals, like why would we expect the AI to respect us and treat us like with compassion when that is not the example that we're putting out there? And it was brutal. Like it was a brutal intervention with the Mayans and the Aztecs to get them to like let go of their ways. And I'm gonna get a lot of hate from a lot of people that are like, oh, how dare you talk about your Hispanic roots that way. I don't freaking care. I don't care who you are. You can't tell me that it was okay to be carving out people's hearts. I don't care if Beyonce herself came and told me, hey, cutting out hearts is like something we do. And I don't care if someone's like, oh, you should be careful talking about them, which leads me to my next point, right? So we know that it's kind of like the end of times. It's 39 minutes. I'm going to try to wrap this up, and I had to make this video because if I don't, it just like starts to accumulate in like my conscious, like hey, like it doesn't matter if one person hears 5 seconds of what I'm saying and it's the person that I was supposed to get that message to, right? Like the more people that hear it, the better for me, because then I get to, because this is fun for me, and then I get to spend more time on stuff that I think would help more people versus me going back to corporate America and working there. But if that's what I have to do, then that's what I'm going to do, like I accept that. And maybe it's going to be neither of those paths, because I've actually been asking all these psychics, like do we couple with these aliens that are supposed to show up? Because that's like, they're supposed to show up right around 2026, and I do think that it will be like that year. Or I mean, okay, so like that they show up like for the Masters, I guess, because I have seen them. I think they were here the other day, and I always feel weird saying stuff like that. And these dogs don't act weird like the other dogs, Apples and Bananas. I lived with them, and like they would react when there were these visitations. And yes, I have people that could corroborate that this stuff was happening. It was before there were cameras everywhere. And I just feel weird talking about it. So I get it how hard it is to talk about stuff, right? Like I get it how hard it is to not feel like you should just shut the hell up already. But it's like the end of times. Like either you're gonna step up and like be the leader that you signed up to be before you came into being, or you're going to face the man in the mirror, or the woman in the mirror. Like that's all I can really say. And I would rather face the scrutiny of people I don't even know are there on as I record my own self, listening to my own self. There's probably nobody listening, and it's like the right person or people will hear it the right way, just like when I get to hear people, then I get to like get what I needed from it, right? So that's just like I guess the way that we decided to pass the messages along. And so yeah, like that's my story. Like it's written all over my documentation and my medical paperwork. It has to do with why I have a fiduciary instead of any family on paper, because the whole thing was like pretty crazy. And the big reason why I am gonna do this, as not easy as it is, because it's not easy, it's not easy at all, is because I did write a thesis, and I was gonna show it right here. So when I wrote, so it's called I don't know, it's called some kind of paper. I'm trying to okay, it's pulling up right now. Okay, so it's, what did my so see, like it's a thesis, but it's also like some kind of paper, a survey paper, right? So like this thesis, so it's a thesis, but it's also a survey paper. And I honestly, I wish I knew what that meant, and I don't remember, but Dr. Massey did tell me what it is. But it was on the case for post-quantum cryptography on blockchain technology. And then I'll show you why I always use the other title, because in my memory, it's the other title because it's the way that I always presented it. But I just want to show you, like when I wrote this, right? I dedicated it, can you see that? I can't even make this bigger. I dedicated it to my dogs and my dogs. And so the truth is that there still needs to be more scaffolding. I could just be on my merry way and ignore all this stuff and just be like, I'm just going to meditate and end up in the happy place. But I have to accept that I won't be able to look at myself in the mirror if I didn't make this like last ditch effort to be like, hey man, like think about what I don't have kids, I'm barren, but I was a teacher, so I saw a lot of kids. And actually my dad was made to eat his pets because they were poor, and nobody, well, they weren't always poor, but they became poor. And they didn't tell him that they were eating their pets until after they ate their pets. And that's just so cruel. And let me tell you, like, it'll fuck a person up. Right? So I just, yeah, I just feel like there's still some scaffolding and like this last ditch effort to say, I can hear my dog saying that there are people that are doing these like kind of rituals to dogs so loudly that I looked into it and I called this place because like somehow I ended up finding this. I think it was Perplexity that eventually gave me this information, because trust me, none of this information was like clear. None of it. I mean, I spent hours like digging through so much like nonsense to get to this information. But I ended up at this phone number, and I didn't look at the pictures, and I don't want to, but so I called them, and I was like, it was already like 10 at night. I was like, there's no way that this is real. Like, this can't be real. Like, this, because I never would have thought to look for this, right? And by the way, they're called the Wounded Paw Project. Well, like one of the projects that I had posted, I think on here, was that I wanted to make shoes for dogs. Like, I've been saying that since I was in Boulder. So it's like funny to me that they're called Wounded Paw Project. And then like I'm talking about wanting to make shoes for dogs for so long. They happened to be in Virginia, which I lived in when I was in the Navy. And so when I called the guy, I fumbled my words, and I was like, oh yeah, like you guys are saying that there's like still animals being killed, and he was like, yes. And then that's all he said, and then he hung up on me because I think I was fumbling my words, because I was like not expecting them to answer, and then for them to answer that way was like, what? Like too much synchronicity, right? And so then I texted him, and I can actually pull up the text, and let me just like move this because there's stuff there that's not for everybody. But let me see. Like he never did text me back, but now I know, right, that they do exist. And maybe it's because they're like special ops. I don't know, they're in Virginia, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're just like doing stuff, right? So like I was just like, hey, like this is my whole big long story, because it's not true that writing a paragraph is an insult. Like some of us use words, right? And I was just telling him, like, I did not think you were gonna answer, and I was in the middle of this like channeling thing, and when I'm like in this, I don't have other words for it. Like I really think I'm channeling technology answers ever since that happened. And even before that, like I was always really good with, like, as few times as I got to use computers, because I grew up poor, like, or I mean, relatively speaking. No, I can't say that. Like I didn't grow up around access to computers is the better way to say that. So I didn't have access to computers till I was like 22 or something. But every chance I had, I was like really good at them. But anyway, like so I think I'm channeling like technology again, and so like my brain's like really, really overwhelmed. And so I was trying to tell him like, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to call you so late or whatever, but like I can't stop hearing my dog like showing me the pictures, and that I did pick those words on purpose. Like I hear her showing me pictures, right? Like there's like that's how intense it is, of these puppies, and their feet are hurting, and there's like too much coincidence. And like the fact that the guy answered and said like, yeah, like they really are finding more of these dogs, right, is like my last ditch effort to speak up and say, like, I'm not asking anybody to persecute anybody from Haiti or whatever, like, or any of the immigrants, or to accuse people, you know, or Puerto Rican people or Cuban people or whomever else like might be practicing this stuff. I'm just saying like if they're really getting breeders to make dogs for them so that they can go and enact their sick, twisted Hollywood crap, like that's I take issue with that, right? That's different. And there's no government regulation on this. I looked into it. Maybe there is, but there's none that I could find. And all it, like there's protections because of First Amendment rights. But there's no centralized place where the halal like reports where they get their animals from. And so they go to breeders, and I can't figure out like what kind of breeders. And so my goal is, if I can get enough, I guess I'm not gonna call it funding, but just like if I can sell enough of my automation products, right, to self-sustain for the next month, I will spend my time like finding underground maps for the cities that I think this is happening in, where I think that they're keeping these dogs. And I know I sound crazy, I know. And I hope that, like, whatever, I quantum jump out of this freaking timeline, because I don't want to see it. But I know that if I don't say something, I'm not going to be able to face myself in the mirror, because I can hear it, right? And all this stuff is like adding up. And I think when Trump said that they were eating dogs, I think he probably heard secondhand information, and it's probably, and I know for a fact now that it's rooted in truth, because this project told me 2 days ago over the phone, yes it is, and then like here's the evidence, right? And then also all this other stuff, right? Like to me it's not no longer silly. And so that's why I don't, things that I always would go to lawyers, because like cases have become to lawyers like a file on a desk, but it's like kids die and dogs die and cats die while there's some system that's processing paperwork. So when they tell people like Jaguar to like go get a lawyer and be sure that what she's saying is correct, I just feel like to my soul, like this is when I have to like step up and step in, and say like, hey, to my dogs and my dogs, like you're protecting your paperwork while people are dying during the end times. All right, like just think about how that comes off. That we know that these people here, right, like, see them, these people right here, right, we know that they did horrible things, and there's so many more secrets, and there's like stuff that could be said, but it doesn't get said because you have all this minutia nonsense, when there are, I mean, ask people that are actually psychics, like ask them, like, are there people that are somewhere that are still sort of alive? My guess is yes, right? Like they're probably trying to get rid of a lot of people or evidence, and it just blows my mind that there's people that are like, oh, worry about yourself, protect yourself right now from them suing you. It's like, what? So that leads me to this guy, right? Because